Hello, I'm Dr. Michael Kujan, and I'm with our Adult Faith Formation team at St. Ambrose Church. And I'd like to inform you what we looked at last week. We took a look at law. Laws. Who wants to follow laws? Unless we have to, right? Well, our freedom sometimes is held back by the laws we have to follow, but in other cases, the law helps us be more free, to be human, to be alive, to be someone rooted in what's most important. So today's recap looks at what it means to follow law for a desire to know the truth and to live the truth. We're focusing on divine and natural law, different ways that it's made known to us how we should live, to flourish as human beings, to be happy. You might be tempted to say, who would know better than me what's best for me? I have my own experiences, I have my own values, so why do I need someone else to give me a law to follow? But we must realize that our morality, our actions, have to be rooted in law. It can't just be based on our own wishes, because that leads to a lot of problems, not only with society, but it also gets in the way of our own happiness, because God is the one who ultimately gives us the law to become more happy, to become more fulfilled in His love. So we need to discern what is right and wrong based on the law God has revealed to us throughout tradition, throughout history, and in our church today. Law is something that is taught to us so that we can follow it. There are different types of law. There's the law that God has in His own mind from all eternity, the way He designed us. And then there's the way that we, as human beings, share in God's law. By being created of God, we can come to know who we are as human beings with a human nature. And that's called natural law, knowing what it is that I am made for. There's also divine law, when God has throughout history revealed His truths to us, such as in the Old Testament with the Torah given to Moses, and in the New Testament you have the gospel of Jesus Christ, containing lessons, moral laws for us to follow. And then there's, of course, human laws that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in society, in the church, in the family, in schools, and whatnot. I'd like to briefly touch on divine law and human law, and divine law and natural law, rather. Divine law is, as I said, very scriptural, based on what God has revealed. It helps us to become a disciple of Jesus, because we want to, if we love Jesus, follow His commands. And it is by this knowledge of what is right for us, as God has shown, that we can be fully members of the church. But in addition to the things that God tells us, there's also a natural law that we have a sense of. It's written on our hearts to know what is ultimately good for us. It's sometimes hard to know what's best for us, but it is possible, with some thinking about it, with discussion with others, to come to some conclusions about what's right and wrong for human beings. We know, of course, in our faith that God created our human nature and made it for a certain purpose, which really helps us know what we are made for as humans. But even by the light of our own human reason, we can do some work to figure out what we should do. And natural law involves all that we are, body and soul together. In a way, natural law can be a good way to talk with others who don't share your Catholic faith about what it is to be a righteous person, to be someone who's doing the right sorts of things. Here's the basics of natural law. First of all, do good and avoid evil. Pretty basic stuff. In addition, we know that as living creatures, we want to preserve our life and to do whatever we need to flourish bodily. We also want to take care of our children and to educate them, just like any sort of animal might want to raise their young. But there's also some special things that make us human, things like the ability to know and love God, the ability to appreciate each other in society on a deep level, and to work for the common good. That's something that makes us especially human. That's what we're made for. So it's often difficult to know exactly what to do. You might have those basic principles that you want to preserve your life, you want to educate your children, and you want to live well in society and with God. But practical issues come up a lot, and it's hard to deal with them. Sometimes it's easier to know what not to do than what to do. For example, you know not to go around murdering, but you're not maybe sure what you should do with your life. So there are a lot of guidelines that we can search for to order our lives towards what is good, but it is a difficult process. It's something that God must help us with. And the better we know who we are, the better we can live as we are made to be. So on the whole, we have all these different abilities. Some we share with plants and animals, some are unique to us. We have lots of emotions that sometimes tell us what's good or what's bad and make us afraid to deal with problems that come up. All sorts of emotions that we have. And we desire so many interesting things in this world, and ultimately we have a desire for God. It's quite natural, in fact. The more we're in tune with our passions, our appetites, our sense of who we are, the more we can use our reason to understand how best to act, and then to use our God-given free will to do what is right. And ultimately, the best way to know what is right is to have virtue, the constant way of living that is for the good. That's why next Sunday we're going to take a look at virtue and its opposite, vice. So come join us next week for our discussion of virtue and vice.